Right. So thank you all for being here. Another Guild happy hour. As we always kick off these happy hours, please post your social media in the chat so we can follow each other. Also, it's always interesting to see which social platforms we're using these days as they collapse and shift around us. So post your socials, please. Today, the Guild is so lucky to be joined by Kevin Asato, Executive Director of the National Black Brewers Association, NB2A, and Beny Ashburn, also in leadership with NB2A and CEO of Crown and Hops. I think most members here should hopefully be familiar with both of our guests, but Kevin is a 30-year veteran of the beverage industry, having worked at ABI, Miller, PepsiCo, Bacardi, Republic National Distributing. If you had any question about any tier of the industry, alcoholic or other beverage, you could probably call Kevin and he would know the answer. Beny Ashburn is CEO of Crown and Hops.
In there or no?
You know also that she was the keynote speaker at Craft Brewers Conference. She's also the co-founder of Circle of Crowns, the largest Black-owned beverage alliance in the US, and we are very lucky to have both of them. So welcome, Kevin and Beny. Hi. Yeah, so I think I called this the state of Black-owned breweries because I think our members were very aware of and most beer media and craft beer fans were aware of the creation of the NB2A 2 years ago. 2 years ago.
Actually,
and
December of 22, yes.
Wow. But I wonder if folks are totally caught up on all the work you've done since then, because it's been a lot. So I thought that this would be a great check-in to see what's been going on since then. So maybe we can just start by what is the state of Black-owned breweries? How is the work going? How are you feeling?
Wow, let me start with the latter portion first there. How am I feeling? Well, I will tell you, you see smiles all over my face, and it's not simply because I've had, a couple sips of beer. So it's a legitimate bit of happiness and joy for the work that I'm doing here. But quite frankly, just being in this beer industry, I think this opportunity for me has, once again been kind of like my re-entry back into beer, but it's actually allowed me to touch such a larger portion of it. Just the fact that I'm able to have a conversation with the National Beer Writers Guild, that never happened in any portion of my career before. So this is introducing me to a whole new audience of people. Yet what I'm finding more than anything, and I think this is where the true source of my happiness comes, my career, albeit for larger companies and, major mega companies and brands and whatnot, never focused on perhaps some of the more challenging and comfortable questions, right? It was how do we promote and how do we get people to recognize Black or using race as that point of distinction? And naturally, it's uncomfortable. It's a little bit like, ooh, am I allowed to say certain things? Can I say certain things? And even too, I was a bit apprehensive. I'm like, God, how many daggers are going to be coming out of left field? So I should kind of be aware. What I have found is that there is just an overwhelming positivity and desire for the same thing that we wanted. And that positivity and desire is not just coming from the community that looks like me and Beny. It's an example of this audience right here on this call. There are more people that don't look like us that are calling for the exact same thing we're wanting. So it ended up being what was a bit apprehensive, but excitement blossomed into a whole heck of a lot of, okay, I'm most certainly not alone, and I'm not going through this wow, I'm not fighting an uphill battle. So, I say that tongue in cheek, all of this is uphill battle, because if it was downhill and easy, then I wouldn't have a job. So, and the need for this organization wouldn't exist here, or anything else, any of our peer groups like Pink Boots Society, right? If it was all that easy there. So suffice it to say, I've had a great time on what I'm doing and the individuals I'm meeting with it through this course there. But I also like to turn it up to Benny. And, she's coming from a very different perspective, right? She's living and breathing, brand building. So, Benny, how are you feeling?
Uh, I think I feel the same kind of mixed emotions of excitement. Because for me, even though we've been doing this, Crowns and Hops, we've been doing this for a while, it's still very exciting with every new opportunity that presents itself, down to even having the opportunity to speak in Vegas is just monumental for me, and being able to stand on this stage as a Black woman in beer with someone like Fawn Weaver and be brought in to inspire thousands of brewers, primarily white male brewers, was amazing, because I think our stories are so similar, and that we all got into the craft beer business for the love of the industry. And I think over time, people have lost that love because of the struggles and the ups and downs of where the industry kind of is. There's a lot of really amazing breweries closing, et cetera. But the great thing about being on this side of it, from the diversity front, is every day I'm introducing a new consumer to beer. And that is such an amazing feeling when we do tastings and go to places where your average craft brewer, beer consumer doesn't live. And, they always maybe start with a little bit of that hesitance, like, oh, I don't really drink beer. And you're like, just try it. And it's that reminder of some of these, legacy brewers, that first time you gave someone a pint. You remember that? Remember when you did that 10, 15, 20 years ago? And that overwhelming emotional feeling you got when they loved it and they were surprised and they were delighted. I still get the pleasure of living in that. So I have all that emotional component of being able to live in that world, but then I also have the struggles of where the industry is, and knowing that we're the since COVID, tap rooms and public spaces and everything, the whole shift of the industry has forced me to pivot more times than I could probably even imagine I would do when I started this business 7, 8 years ago. So um, it's exciting and it's scary, right? Because I know the kind of change that we can have, just myself, the NB2A, and all of the amazing Black breweries that exist. And it's exciting to finally see everyone coming around and understanding this change in our consumer is for the greater good of the industry. And if we do not work together to bring more people to the table, our industry that we love so much is going to die. And I think we're finally starting to see everybody turn around and understand, let's collaborate and do it together.
Yeah, well said. You mentioned being able to pivot and adapt and change, and that's been the name of the game for everybody for a bit now in beer. In terms of the NB2A, I mean, it's still a relatively new organization, but what were its priorities sort of at the outset, and have any of those changed as you've realized, like, oh, this is really who our membership is, this is really what is needed from us? Have you kind of maintained those core priorities, or have there been new initiatives and new priorities?
Well, our guiding principles still remain 100% intact. And, when I look at the core, the core four priorities there, we want to make sure that we promote this organization as its first of its kind. We want to celebrate the history and legacy of African Americans in brewing. We want to increase the number of Black-owned either breweries or those significantly in a production such as brewmaster capacity. And then finally, we want to continue to foster the Black, and advocate for policy and have a legislative voice. Those priorities still very much live in play, and it'd be, yeah, I would say we still have so much work to do against that. But I mean, I can still say in those avenues, just in the year that we've been here, I can say, holy cow, how are we performing against those initiatives? And while I can say I'm extremely, extremely pleased, I can say that, oh my God, as a win comes through, 3, 4, 5 more opportunities to do more comes up. And so when I look back and say, how did this organization perform against those principles? Well, I could say that in year one, I think we absolutely established ourselves as a trade organization that's, identified as a foremost authority in Black beer. And specifically against that, when I look at, some of the national trade organizations, such as the Beer Institute, such as National Beer Wholesalers, some of the other national, they now recognize us, where I can now have a conversation with Brian Crawford at the Beer Institute and Craig Purser at NB2A, and even quite honestly on the spirit side, Chris Swanger at Discus. So they are recognizing us. And if there was probably one big piece that is, while I'm being recognized from, or even Bob Peace from the Brewers Association, I forgot to mention them as a big partner. The fact that we had a call just 2 weeks ago with the state guild leaders, that all the state guild leaders reached out to us saying, how can we include you in the work that we are doing at a state level? To me, that resonated even more than the connectivity that I'm having at the national level. All that to say is that our organization absolutely in year one stood up, gained the credibility to be recognized by our peer group and our peer set from a trade association standpoint. So thrilled to pieces with that. The second piece, when I'm talking about, celebrating the history and legacy, one of the things that we're doing is, to bring that awareness is, of course, through our social media channels, through our newsletter, to kind of continue to have an opportunity to showcase what our Black brewers are doing. But we're also doing it through National Black Brewers Day, where we are trying to really help acknowledge and help people understand that African Americans just didn't come into it 5 years ago, 5 minutes ago. Ted Mack started the very first brewery in 1970, and that is 54 years ago. So half a century. We've been there for a minute, never mind the thousands of years. But I point that in a particular because when we talk about how we're getting that visibility, we set out with a goal of seeing if we can get 10 jurisdictions, cities or states to recognize and, Black Brewers Day. We finished the year with 16. On the heels of that, we connected with, some of our partners there at the Congressional Black Caucus, and they said, wow, the work that you guys are doing, we want to make this a federal piece. So let's make this a federal recognition. And so now it is House Bill 1297 that is that has been submitted by Representative Horsford out of Nevada. Yeah, he's also the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. And so we are seeking to get the approval by next month, actually, so we can actually celebrate it nationally. So that was just another great way for us to gain some more excitement and energy. And, to do that, we also had a very, clear path that, the small team of us, of the staff that's the NB2A and our board members, they're great as they may be, we know we have to ladder into some tools that help broadcast what we're doing. What we've done is we connected with, a PR team that actually was doing the work, pro bono for us to broadcast to get 500 million views and impressions on the work that we're doing. Some of that stuff is the very work that you guys were writing and some of the things that you guys were doing to help broadcast and pick that up. I see Grace in the photo, in the photo there. And of course you, Kate, some of you have done that very work to help broadcast our message. So when we talk about, are we doing the things that we set out to do in terms of getting visibility? I could say yes. If we're getting, 500 million views on some of our activities, that's a win. When I talk about improving the number of Black brewery owners, that one is the one that kind of hits a little bit more emotionally. We were so fortunate to say yes. And, the year one, we could check that box and give Celeste Beatty. She's been in the craft beer scene and, dubbed the first African-American female craft beer owner, craft beer brand owner. But she's never had her own brewery. She's never had her own brick and mortar, always been a contract brewer. We've been so fortunate with working with Adam at a Triumph down in New Jersey, in which he gave us a 25-barrel brew house, donated his brew house to Celeste so that she could actually open up her brewery. That brewery is going to be open in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, so it's going to be called Harlem Brewing South, and that absolutely would never have been able to happen had this relationship not existed with the NB2A and us being able to have a bigger voice and kind of bring all these resources together. And springboarding from that, Vinny and Natalie Salurzo heard and saw the messaging that came through. They felt compelled. They're like, okay, I have a piece of equipment that's kind of exhausted our need for it, but my goodness, there is definitely someone else that could use it. They were inspired by what they heard from Celeste, and they ended up donating it. And we now will have some information coming out, but John Renthorpe at Occasion Fire will be the happy recipient of that, of that, 25-barrel brew house that, started in all the award-winning beers out of Russian River. In addition to Optimism Brewing, heard the same story, and they're like, hey, I've got a virtually new canning line. I'd love to donate it. So Gay Gilmore out of Optimism out of Seattle, they are no longer functioning. They sold it to Stout, but my goodness, they donated it. So then this ends up being received by Leo and Denise Sawadago out of Montclair Brewery. That's going to allow them to get into their new space and branch out in broader distribution. So when I talk about, are we doing the things that help get people into ownership? Yes. And when I think back at how that happened, it's because of the work that some of the people right here are doing. When you guys see a story, find a story, like, oh yeah, I'm equally as inspired, and you're able to broadcast it, that's the stuff that ends up helping us. I want to tell you right now, I mean, I can't share all the details of it, but it's because of the story writing that's been done. We are almost, and once again, I'm chomping at the bit. I want to be able to say more, but I'm just bound by some of the pieces here.
You have a bunch of reporters like rabidly waiting for this. Yeah.
Equipment is fantastic. But when I look at the greater barriers, having commercial space and equipment, those are the two biggest barriers. We are virtually being given a complete ready to run brewery where literally if I plopped a brewery in today, probably in 2 days, we could have it up and running. So once again, I can't tell you who, and I can't tell you where, and I can't tell you all that detail just yet, but my goodness, it is because of the work and perhaps the credibility and the visibility that we're showing that people have assets, people have a desire to help, and rather than just scrapping it or just selling it, some of these things, they're looking to turn it over. So our organization has absolutely created that pathway for resources to come in and get disseminated out to that needed, that necessary group. And then when we talk about legislative and advocacy, that fourth piece there, I talked about how National Black Brewers Day came about through the Congressional Black Caucus to be a national platform. The work that we started doing in informing legislators, both at the city and state level, started getting some traction. As I mentioned, the Congressional Black Caucus really took a shine to what we were doing. And I cannot believe that this type of dialogue is even happening, because I most certainly could have never scripted it. They told us that, hey, the White House would like to speak to you. And then scratching my head, the White House, what this is not right. Kamala Harris has an economic wealth program that she would actually like the National Black Brewers Association to be a part of and to tour with her across the country and visit some of the Black-owned breweries. I could not have had or scripted this bit of excitement and visibility coming through. So I could not be happier with the work and the partnership, because it's not just the people here, it's literally our collective community, not just our Black brewers, it's everybody to help make this a big enough deal. So we are going to be spending some time now. Admittedly, that conversation was had before she was tapped on the shoulder to be the presidential nominee. So her priorities may have shifted just a little bit. So we'll definitely, we'll continue to work with her staff, but we're being mindful, of where she will ultimately land. But once again, that's an example of, some of the work that has been done and some of the connectivity that's been done. We're realistic in ourselves there. We're not as financed as well as the Brewers Association or the Beer Institute to make significant policy change, right? That's not what this organization can do. But when you start talking about the impact of what we have working within our skill set, well, we have some groups like the Congressional Black Caucus that amplify our voice and, that can augment the efforts and support the efforts that, the efforts of the Beer Institute and the Brewers Association that they're tracking for, our brewers benefit too. We don't need to exhaust our resources in those efforts because we got the big hitters, right? We got the big money going after those big things that help benefit us for the most part as well. So that's just, like I said, just a quick summary and overview of some of the bigger wins there. And going back to your question, did we need to see a change in our priorities? I believe we're still tracking on board. Our board members, are coming into our second year, and they still think that there's a lot of work with the 4 platforms and pillars that we've identified. And I would have to agree. So there's still a lot of work. Admittedly, some of our activities may have changed, while my efforts around brewery ownership may have been to access funds and financial resources. When we're bypassing some of those steps in terms of, here is a brewery, here is equipment. Okay, that is just as valuable and just as good. So really, really good stuff.
These are all impressive wins for a new organization, and it sounds like you're finding the support and buy-in. It doesn't sound like there's pushback to the initiatives of the organization. What are the constraints? I mean, is it just board members' time, and is it financial? What are the pieces that are keeping you from doing even more than that?
Well, something, I'm going to tap Benny on the shoulder for one of these responses there, but I will tell you, we are a team of 2, myself and Elena Koenig-Busey. We actually had to tap Benny on the shoulder and, from our own community, say, we cannot get everything done. She would cringe, and Benny, tell me if I'm wrong, but you would cringe when you would see some of our marketing efforts and some of our activities out there. She's like, oh my God, you guys can be doing so much more, and it helped tell that story better and the whole 9 there. But we are just short on perhaps some discipline expertise. So marketing we're short on, so we had to bring some people in. Quite honestly, if I had to be super candid, the workload that's coming in, sure, it's heavy. It's heavy, and we don't have enough funding yet to really be excellent at everything. So you're right, board members are being tasked to do a lot more than they probably even asked to do there. So but let me turn over to Benny so she can actually get some perspective on the work that the NB2A or just the organization as a whole is missing.
I think another way to look at it is when we think about how long the brewing industry has just existed, and we know that to date there's about 10,000 breweries in the US, and what I think there's like how many Black-owned breweries right now are there, Kevin? Maybe
86.
86. So let's just put a number. So 20 years we've been in the brewing industry, and finally 1 year a Black organization comes in that can support an entire community of people that has been there the whole time and had zero support. So imagine the number of calls, the number of information, the demand, the advice, the guidance, everything is now being poured into this one organization. As soon as they announced it, everyone flooded, hey, oh good, can you help me with this? I need help with that, because they became the singular trusted resource for the Black voice. And when you're in a community where you feel like you have no one, barely have yourself because you're learning as you go, you're kind of building the plane as you fly it, just imagine that kind of demand on this one organization in such a very short period of time. So when you think about the resources for the beginning of any nonprofit, it always starts small, but you're starting small with a really big ask. And as Kevin kind of listed, they've been able to accomplish so much because the need for it has always existed. So now we're living in a space where you have all of this demand and you don't have enough resources to staff it with the amount of people that actually need the support. So I think it's capital, because there are bodies needed to be able to supply all of the initiatives and the organization, the structure that is available. Again, within 1 year, the White House is calling. Like, that's incredible, right? When you really think about that, they've probably just been waiting to call. They just didn't have anybody to call this entire time, and now they finally do. So there are festivals, there are resources. I could say personally at Crowns and Hops, capital and financing has always been an issue for us. Opening a brewery is very capital intensive. I think everyone knows that. And as we've shifted our business plan to immediately move to distribution because of COVID, the whole model for tap rooms has changed. So what we once knew as a model for success was tap rooms pour pint, pint by pint. We are now figuring out this new distribution model for these Black-owned breweries who are now contract brewing. And remember, 5 years ago, contract brewing was still relatively taboo. So not only are we trying to create a voice and a path and support, we're also trying to create this successful business model for these new Black beer brands that have limited capital, but have endless consumer possibilities. I mean, if you look at the numbers, what is it, $208.6 billion in beer, and 80 something million are multicultural consumers. We have a big chunk of people that we can connect to that are looking for more representation, and representation matters in this industry. So I think those are some of the hurdles that Kevin and Elena and the team are doing their very best to fulfill. But it's hard. It's hard when you're the only voice that it can support a community of people who are ready for success. We don't have individual organizations per state. And you also got to think about, there's a brewery association in every state, and majority of the people in those brewery associations do not look like us. So even when you start to divide it off, you still always have someone to go to. This is one organization for the entire nation of African Americans in the brewing community. So it's amazing. And there's so much more that can be done. But if it's a matter of support, how do we get more capital into the organization so that they can get more bodies to grow this thing to the level that it could be, to be as successful as it needs to be?
I think of you as being such a leader and an uplifter of others in this industry. It's why you were tapped to do the keynote. But I'd be curious to know how Crowns and Hops has benefited from its membership in NB2A. Like, I think of you as like giving benefit to others, but I'd be curious where you've seen the benefit yourself and in your business.
I would say our mission at Crowns and Hops has always been bigger than just us, because while we weren't the first Black-owned brewery, we were one of the first to create resources and opportunities for other Black-owned craft breweries to understand the model for it. For example, our grant provided Montclair their first canning line, which saved them during COVID. Because of the canning line that we were able to give them funding for, they were able to get in Whole Foods and make it through those really tough years of COVID. Fast forward, now they're getting a real canning line, a real canning line so they could grow. They're opening their second location. Like that's amazing. I think for us, being able to sit down with experts, industry experts like Kevin and Elena, and know that we can provide support and education behind the scenes to then pay it forward to future Black-owned craft beer brand is the best thing that I think we could do for the greater success of the industry. My advice, having been through all the ups and downs, the peaks and the highs and the lows, I can have conversations with Kevin from someone who has experienced it all and know the path to success. And then the NB2A can take that information and build out programs, resources, and resources that speak directly to the issues that we as Black brewers are having versus a high level concept of what we think they need. I can tell you specifically, this is how we could have been supported to get us closer to success and profit. And I think that is the biggest contribution that I can give into the NB2A for other people. And then in turn, we win because everybody else wins. And I think that's the mindset we have to have. This is, we all rise together. We cannot do this as individual businesses.
And I'd love to add to Benny's statement there in terms of what they've done, and I've never verbalized it back to them. To Benny's point, they have made it more about just the beer and more than just their brand. They have looked to help others so significantly. But in that plight, I'm able to see that businesses and brewery ownership, their own very real struggles and their bandwidth limitations there. So as much as their heart and emotions desire to help a community far greater than just their immediate brand ownership, we're able to take some of this off so they can actually pull back some of their desires, still have their dreams be realized of helping a larger community, but allow them to focus on their business there. They're giving us access to their work and their relationships that they've been working on. They're giving us access to some retailers that we never had a connection with to actually build this brand out, not just for Crowns and Hops, but for the organization. But this was some relationships that no one else had. The association, no other brewers had. So whether it's like a concessionaire like OVG that has, manages a bunch of stadiums and whatnot, that's coming from, Crowns and Hops. When I'm talking about them doing what they do or what they call no big deal skills, it was so important for us to come to life in a big way at CBC. And I didn't know where to turn. I'm not a party planner. I'm not a guy that puts on promotions like this. Benny and Teal already had the ideas formulated, the partners identified, because for them, this was a no-brainer. And they're like, okay, I hear you, Kev. I hear how you want to bring this to life. They brought it together so easily. And I can say that that was as our coming out party, if you will, of how we want to do things to the beer community. If it was not for them, we could not have represented all the 10 Black breweries that were on tap that day to showcase those brands. And so, Benny and Tio, thank you so much for what you have done for the association and what you continue to do. Both, Tio serving as a board of director, Benny supporting us as our lead marketing and PR advisor, continually giving us so much more than they even recognize there. So they give us a lot.
Aw, thanks, Kev.
But Kate, I do want to tee up one thing there.
Please.
I talk about how exciting, how much work and all of the excitement that this has come through, but we are still small. And because of that, we have some pretty intimate relationships with our breweries, and we're not impervious, and we're not the panacea for all the challenges associated with the beer industry. And it hurts perhaps a little deeper, when we have a situation like Weathered Souls going out of business and closing their doors. Our very president's brewery, mind you, he had such a minority stake, but we're not impervious to the stuff that's happening in the marketplace, and we can't always help them. Unfortunately, we had another one, Bastet, that went for so long as being a home brewer and fought to get his brick and mortar, and unfortunately they had to close. And then sadly, Neutral Ground was another one, and we once again we're not without it, but it just seems to cut a little deeper because this is the very purpose of why we're here. Never mind trying to increase the number. Just as important is not to decrease that number. And so that's that opportunity that, man, I think that serves as fuel, but really cuts kind of close to the heart.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, I think all of us who cover this industry, sad to wake up every day and see a brewery that closed, and it must be even yeah, a little deeper for you when that group is so much smaller. You know, we're looking at 10,000 national breweries. You're looking at 16 or whatever. Are are those challenges? I mean, obviously, some of those challenges are related to the larger headwinds for craft beer. But are you also seeing that there are specific challenges even to established Black owned breweries that are specific to them being Black owned? Or is this just industry headwinds largely?
You know, I couldn't say that I have the definitive understanding for every business that closed this past year. I may hear it from the brewery owners, but in many cases, that's one perspective. It may not be the entire or comprehensive story. So, yes, I do think that the headwinds that some of our brewers face are absolutely consistent with what the industry faces. It's not to say that just because you're a Black-owned brewery that you're actually running a good business. We're not without, some product quality opportunities within our own, Black breweries. We're not without some marketing and driving demand or traffic into your location opportunities. We're not without our own business challenges. And so I think that's the other key component here. As much as we want to help bring more success to the Black brewing community and build that Black brewing community, some individuals, their learning or their access, may not have time enough to get or acquire those pieces to sustain their business there. So, when I see, like a Marcus, for example, he is, the face of Black is Beautiful, probably the epiphany of, how important collaboration can be or how powerful it can be. Why did that business not work? Well, I can say that Marcus didn't have responsibility for every aspect of that business. And I'm not to say that if he did, maybe the outcome would be different. We don't know. We can play the guessing game all day long, but suffice it to say, there's a lot of factors that make or break a business. Sometimes it's just good old-fashioned luck too. I don't know those nuances that existed for all those other ones there. But when I look at, from a broader scope, I'm working with Bart Watson, I'm working with the Beer Institute, I'm working with, Leo from the NB2A, the economist from the NB2A, and I'm able to pull back the numbers there and say, all right, let me take a look at the performance of Black-owned breweries as, compared to breweries of their peer set, right, their size. We consistently, and this is now 2 years, I've been able to pull this data to show that our Black-owned breweries are growing. We do have a segment that's slowing, and that's, one of our smallest segments there. But by and large, 70% of our breweries are outpacing the industry in terms of volume and production growth. Once again, I can't attribute it all to the fact that we're Black, but these are just the facts, right? I mean, we could do a deeper dive on the unique pieces there, but what I did compare is true year-over-year volume. So this isn't just a slew of new openings. I carved out anyone that was not, facing prior year volume. So to still say that that's the key piece, I do think that's a contributing factor. I also go back to the fact that when I look at how craft beer grew over the 15, 20 years of its life cycle, it was rooted in community, right? These craft beer shops opened up in whether it could be major metropolitans or rural towns, but regardless of the location, the localized community within walking, maybe short driving distance is who supported it. And it wasn't, the love of beer necessarily, it was the congregation of people that are a part of something similar, right? It allowed everybody to come together. People naturally want to come together, unless you're a psychopath, I think. I mean, but for the most part, everybody wants to reasonably come together. And when you had these, local brew pubs, people naturally came together. Those opportunities didn't flourish in perhaps, predominantly Black, Hispanic communities, right? Brew pubs didn't, flower there because of all the things that we're trying to address today, right? Access to capital, ease to entry, all those things prevented a lot of that. So it also, the secondary kind of like alienation was the beer drinker, the Black beer drinker at that. When you look at some of the deeper work that's been done on how beer has been marketed to the different demographics, the Black beer community is the one that has had the least amount of exposure and education to craft beer. You know, it's not meant to be so stereotypical to say, hey, look, all Black people drink 40-ounce malt liquor, but the marketing that was driven towards that audience was almost consistently a 40-ounce size, high strength malt liquor, which all beer is malt liquor, but suffice to say they made it a point to say malt liquor. And that started in the 70s, and that heavy energy was what the greatest amount of exposure to beer, on a conscious effort was done by the larger beer marketers. We didn't, like I said, we missed out on that opportunity to educate our larger community of people. And when I did a deeper dive, and this is what's evident in my State of the Black Brewers report, we can show that if we can pull and authentically connect with the Black beer drinker, it can have such a significant impact, not just to Black breweries, to the total craft beer industry. It can conservatively represent an incremental 2 million barrels of volume that can come into. And that's just connecting authentically with an audience that is yet to really be informed, educated, and exposed to, the quality and goodness that, craft beer is.
That's so well said, Kevin. And I think there are so many ways to connect those potential drinkers back to breweries that really understand them, right? Like that's the whole point of craft beer, is that it's like the makers of the product understand very deeply the desires and needs of the people drinking the end product. And that's where your organization is so the glue, trying to make more of those producers happen. I think I would be curious to know, given that we're a bunch of media on this call, is there a part of the NB2A in any way, an angle of it, or a specific person or specific little anecdote? Is there a story that's gone undertold about the NB2A or about Black breweries in the US? Like, is there just something that you're like, this is cool and no one talks about it? Beny, feel free if you have an idea too. Just someone that deserves something, or someone or some idea that deserves a little more shine.
Beny T, I'll give you the first go around on this one.
That is, that's a good question, but a very hard question. Sometimes because you are the thing, you don't even know if there's something different or unique about who you guys already are. So I don't know from the outside looking in if you could say, wow, you guys all have this thing in common that no one's ever talked about. I will say this, I don't know if this is necessary story, a media story, but we have found that most of the Black-owned breweries owners went to HBCUs. And I don't know if that's particularly a story. I think it is not surprising that most of us went to historically Black colleges and universities. They are known for creating individuals who will absolutely think outside the box. Our hopefully future president went to Howard, and we have a lot of really amazing HBCU graduates that have gone to make history in industries where we usually don't see ourselves. But I couldn't say that's a story. I think, Kevin, you might have a much better perspective from the outside looking in if there is a story that's just completely not told yet.
Well, Kate, there's 86 stories. Those 86 Black breweries all have a very unique story that should be told. And my goodness, you can make a miniseries out of, chronicling their pathway to where they're at today and some of the challenges and successes realized there. But that aside, specific to the NB2A, look, I can tell you, I'm eager to really broadcast this story about the equipment donations that are coming through, I'm extremely eager to help broadcast that message on how impactful that can be to get a Black-owned brewer into his or her own brewery and actually live, have realize their own business. When I see the windfall of just the Celeste Beatty piece and the work that we broadcasted there and how that affected 2 other brewers to donate and how that work affected now whole breweries being turned over. This is where I'm going, my goodness, yes, there is a space, there is a pathway that we can take that into a very well needed audience. They can absolutely utilize these pieces there. And so, I've been struggling to try and, how do I broadcast some of these wins to further amplify that message there? But that piece, and I guess it goes back to one of your original questions, Kate. If there's some things that I should have done differently, I guess that's precisely it. I was so steady on let's develop a $50 million fund that can buy equipment, that can buy commercial space, that can facilitate ownership. If there's one thing I probably need to change, I should have took a look at the climate. Breweries are closing, equipment is abundant, and perhaps getting it at a discounted rate, or for those that have depreciated that asset in full, they could turn that over at this point, especially if they're having success and going to different and larger locations. That's about one of the bigger things that I probably could have made a change on, because it is the quickest way for us to get a brewery owner into play.
Those are, I love both of your answers. And Beny, I think, the HBCU pipeline, I guess, is perhaps not surprising, but it also feels like an opportunity for further partnership down the road. Not trying to add more things to you guys' plate. It feels like the connection between NB2A and HBCUs, like that's a very cool back and forth. Yeah.
I will say this though, just to emphasize Kevin's point. One of the heaviest lifts, and even we at Crowns and Hops, having done this with all our success, we still haven't been able to open our own space. And I could say, if there was a world where we could have leveraged equipment or the assurance that we had all the tools we needed to open our doors, we would be in a much different situation as a business than we probably are now. Not being able to control our own production is one of the toughest challenges of being in the beer industry. We are literally at the mercy of someone else managing when they make our beer, how our beer gets shipped to our distributor. We can control our partner relationships, we can control our recipes, but if anything happens to that brewery, it affects everything we do moving forward. So having that equipment be donated, especially by, my God, Russian River, the ultimate of the ultimate breweries, is incredible. And I'm sure all of you know Natalie and Vinny. They have been #1 supporters of Crowns and Hops, the sweetest, nicest, most giving people in the whole 8 years that we've been doing this. And for them to happily, I mean, I think when they gave their in Vegas, I think that Natalie even shed a tear a little bit. Like, this means something. This isn't just we have equipment, yeah, give it to no, this is changing the conversation and literally putting a dent in an industry that needed it for years, centuries, you know what I mean? Like, this is a big deal. Montclair being able to have a canning line that's efficient and fast to be able to allow them to grow is incredible. It is incredible. And I think if there's any story to tell, how can we creatively tell that story beyond just, oh, good, a Black brewery won, was donated equipment, great. But what does that mean for the industry? I think we always need to look at it. What does that mean for the industry? Now they will have a space to brew beer and invite thousands of multicultural drinkers into their establishment that never had a place to go before. Now Montclair Brewing can put their products on shelves in spaces where representation did not exist in the East Coast, in New Jersey, in some of those spaces. So creatively, if you guys can help find a way to tell that story in a few ways, that would be the biggest benefit to how we continue to grow the NB2A and provide resources for other Black-owned breweries.
Yeah,
Love that.
that's a story. It's a heck of a story. Well, I would like to invite anyone else, any other members, rapid fire. Do you have questions, large or small? Now is the time. Don't let me ask all the questions.
I have a question, Kate.
Yeah. Yes. Good. Great.
We touched on it a little bit here, but one of the things when I read the State of the Black Brewers report that really kind of impacted me, there are, 16 million people of color who drink but don't drink beer. And Beny, when you and I and Tio talked last year, he said something that really left an impression on me. When you all first started, you looked for stock photos and tried to find, or you like typed in like Black people drinking beer or something like that, and there literally were none. Like you, Crowns and Hops, had to go out and be the first people to just show, like on Instagram, through marketing, through media, Black people drinking beer. So we know there's that disconnect. We know it's systemic, that Black community, craft beer has never really been marketed to them. But I think we have a unique opportunity as people who work in media to shift that and help shift that, paradigm and that change. Like, what are other ways that we can, continue to help change that, help create this new paradigm where we're able to just like organically show Black people drinking beer in our stories, in our Instagram, in our media? Are there creative ways that we can be doing it, just as you're doing it? Because the pressure and the onus shouldn't all be on you, right? It's on us as well.
I don't know how to phrase this, and this is really addressed to all of you guys, the more creative minds. Is there a way to somehow talk about this diversity and of beer and make it less of more Black people and just more people at the table? Like, because I think there are people who are resistant to the idea of, all right, so we have more Black breweries. Okay, great. But it's so much bigger than that. And I'm not sure that we're able, or people believe that coming from us because we're Black. Sometimes there feels like there might be a little bit of a bias, as if we're only promoting one particular culture. How can we creatively tell this story? All right, everyone, knock it off. This isn't just about Black breweries. This is about a bigger industry. And if you, excuse my language, if you guys don't get your asses out of your seats and change this, we are going to lose more breweries that we love, and the industry will never change and it will not grow. How else can we say that where people can actually hear it and stop focusing so much on just this, it's a Black thing, it's a white thing? It's literally, if change does not happen, growth will not exist. And that's my personal opinion about it. I'm sure, Kevin, I'm sure you have your point of view as well.
Yeah, I mean, I could say diversity is a force of economic good, period, end of story. When I look at some of the largest economies in the United States, states like California, states like New York, it is because, their economies are so robust. It's also because they are so wildly diverse. I could even compare a city like Atlanta, that Atlanta's economic health and size is greater than some of the states that surround them. So once again, what are those common threads? It is diversity. It's diversity of not just of racial demographics, but also education, of income levels. There is diversity is not just about color. And so to Beny's point, I could not agree more. It's not that it's just Black owned. It's just that we need to get it more representative of the community that we're just a part of. And it's everybody. Everybody. Yes, this association is hyper-focused on the advancement of Black brewers. But we are also very much in support of diversity, period, and a story. And diversity does not stop at race or color.
Excellent question, Grace. Anybody else with questions for the got like 2 minutes, so speak now or forever hold your peace.
Yeah, I have a less a question than a comment, just a sort of a reflection of life in the beer writing world. You know, we speak to really small audiences. Mostly we write for niche publications, and people who are future beer drinkers don't read those, you know? And I am curious about, and this is true with Black breweries, women-owned breweries, Latino breweries, how to place stories in media that speaks to a population that doesn't drink beer or doesn't have a big interest in beer. You know, last year when I was in Chicago, I was talking to Rich Bloomfield at Funky Town, and he pointed out that a third of the city is Black. And then I talked to some Latino brewers, and they pointed out a third of the city is Latino. And so 2/3 of Chicago is Black or Latino. And I have no idea what media people in Chicago read, but I'm pretty sure it's not my beer blog, and it's not Good Beer Hunting, and it's, you know, so, you know, how to, yeah, it's like a tremendous potential audience in Chicago, to use one city. So I've been trying to ponder that, you know, how do we place stories in front of people who have never thought about beer, who might be interested in it. And that's not, I don't have any answers. It's just something I've been wrestling with as a writer.
So I don't know if this is going to be, you know, this is not meant to be the sole answer there, but, you know, Jeff, good to see you again, speak to you again as well. We are very clear that, and I've, you know, kind of challenged Benny with this all along there. I'm like, you're right. We speak to ourselves a lot, meaning the beer industry as a whole. It was important for year one for us to do that, you know, to really be a credible entity within the beer industry. So we focus a lot of our energies there. But I will tell you that the work that I had to do with our PR company was very, very prescriptive in the fact that I wanted this to get outside of beer and into adult beverage, into food and beverage, into CPG, and then anything else that was going to ladder into Black business. So when you see months like August as being, you know, Black Business Month, this gives us a reason to get this lifted out of beer and into a larger dialogue and a larger publication base and larger audience base. Food and wine ends up being, once again, a larger topic and out of, you know, this space there. CPG gives us those avenues to get out. I don't know what that translates or what that means to, you know, a writer or a journalist, but I know where I want to land my story. I know the audience that I want to touch. I use, you know, a PR agency to help get those stories into that space there. We're going to be putting a fair amount of energy to doing TV, you know, news segments and human interest stories like Good Morning America, like Sunday Morning. So there is a fair amount of energy that I'm pushing the association to use to get into those spaces, because I agree, Jeff, we speak to a small industry, and if I want to reach a larger audience that actually is the growing populace, you know, which is a younger demographic that may not necessarily read these publications, I have to be a supporter of that environmental situation of saying, great, let me pierce the bubble and get outside of craft, and let's get outside of beer and find a reason to align with this other space there. So I am, you know, actively pursuing those three spaces: adult beverage, food and beverage, CPG, and then Black business. 4 segments there.
And I think Grace, we talked about this too, and kind of leaning into culture inside of beer. Like, and I know we're running out of time. I apologize. I don't want to go over, but the way me and Tio kind of divide crowns and hops. When we first started, we were dope and dank. I'm the dope, which is the cultural, the authenticity of the culture. He's the dank, he's the beer, you know, whatever. I fell in love with craft beer culture. And I don't think we talk about craft beer culture and what it means because people are so used to only talking about the beer. But when we started in this 8, 9 years ago, like we have a video called The Line, where we literally see people wrapped around the corner online waiting for a beer release, which is what craft beer used to be. I mean, hours, people would strap with their babies. I mean, it was the whole thing, right? Fast forward, nobody waits online for beer anymore. That's not a thing. But people come out for beer activities and beer gatherings and beer events. So I fell in love with the tap room and I fell in love with the people hanging out in the cornhole because I would never play the cornhole anywhere else. But now I'm like, I love cornhole. I can figure it out. You know, I fell in love with bringing spades or dominoes to the tap room because that's kind of who I am and my culture is. And that's what this younger generation is looking for, coming directly out of COVID when we go through these years of separation and now coming back together. What do people want? What does one pint do with people? It brings them together. So when you look at diverse cultures and communities, the one thing we always have are the sentiment of coming together, and congregation has always existed in communities of color. So that has always been the central core of craft beer. So I think it's people not doing more of the connecting of that craft beer community, craft beer culture, and letting the product and the beer be the secondary bonus to being allowed into this really beautiful space where we're coming together. And nobody's talking about that anymore. You know, it's always kind of shocking to me when I hear these tap rooms are shutting down. I'm like, how are you shutting? You have a space to bring people together. People are looking for togetherness. So it's an angle to take. It does require a slight shift in how you engage with the community. But that I think is the piece that's missing is craft beer culture. It's bigger than all of us. And people don't talk about it enough. And they're still living in that like geek out craft beer mentality. But the product isn't driving it, especially when you go to like any craft beer store and there's 1,000 beers on shelves. How do you even distinguish one from the other if it's not something emotionally connecting you to want to be there in the first place? So it's just something to think about, I think. And that is also what the NB2A is doing. As much as people may not see it, we are bringing people together in spaces where we've never been brought together before. It's about the culture, and we are a cultural driven community. We're emotional and we're passionate and we're fiery, you know, all the things.
Bringing culture to the cup.
Part of it is so important. And you're right. I think we're not really tapping into, like, I think, you know, like TikTok recently, right now you're able to like kind of promote beer on TikTok, right? But I don't see anyone really, I'm actually not on TikTok, but I don't see anyone really in that space kind of doing something like Keith Lee, for example, you know, who's brought so much like awareness but yet culture to food reviews, and doing it on TikTok and Instagram. And, you know, the Keith Lee effect is real, right? And there's no one doing that in craft beer, or just in beer in general, because it still kind of seems like this like guarded space for white men. And I don't know, you know, and people are still like hanging on to that sometimes like to the death. And it's really hampering our industry. And yeah, we just like tapping into that culture part of it, I think is going to be huge to really creating that paradigm shift in our industry.
Agreed.
It was on full display at the NB2A event in Vegas, the best best party of the whole. Even the press conference was like,
yeah,
a good press conference, a fun press conference, if there is such a thing.
Well, we're going to be doing it again at GABF. So at GABF, we are going to be having our after party at Spang-A-Lang, in which we're going to be celebrating, because at GABF, it's actually occurring on October 10th. So we are partnering with the Brewers Association to drive awareness of National Black Brewers Day. And we will have another our second event ever produced by the NB2A in partnership with Spangling Breweries. So this is your formal invite. If any of you are going to GABF, come on down. We will be there.
Amazing. Well, we like any happy hour that wraps up with a party invite. So thank you very much, Benny and Kevin. If folks on this call have additional questions that they didn't get to ask you, what's the best way to get in touch with the NB2A, who is our point of contact there for the media?
I will drop my email right in here into the chat. nb2a.org. There's my email. Feel free to reach out via email or contact Elena if you already have a relationship, or visit our website at our info@nb2a.org. So any one of those would be routed to us. It can't get lost.
Excellent. Well, again, Benny and Kevin, thank you so much for spending time with us. We're very grateful for your time and expertise and sharing with us. And I hope all of our members learned a lot more about the NB2A today. And hopefully they're able to join for one of your upcoming events.
Yeah, and I will say, Kate, thank you very much for signing up the Beer Guild as a member. And want to make sure everyone that's on this call to know that all of you have membership access. So please sign up, and love to have you follow us on your own leisure there.
Thanks so much. Yes, the North American Guild of Beer Writers is an associate member of the NB2A, like a supporter. So we have access to members only resources there. So now you all know that. And yeah, there's no reason to not know what the NB2A is up to. So thanks so much, everyone. And
Thank you, guys.
yeah, see you next time. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thanks.
guys.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.